Welcome to another episode of the Writer's Game podcast, where we help you magnify your voice and monetize your message. I'm your host, Kyle King, 7-time published author, CEO, and founder of the Writer's Game. And I have a question for you. Do you find yourself living behind masks or labels and not really understanding how to introduce, how to show up, and how to have the courage to truly be free and self-expressed in who you truly are? Is this hurting your ability to build, scale, and thrive in business or in other areas of your life? Well, if you're resonating with any of those descriptions that I just gave, we have a woman that's going to be talking to you today about not only her experience as a mom, as a wife, but her ability to transform organizations through her gifts, through her skills, and through her many experiences that she's gained over decades of leading industries across the world. Tara, how are you doing?
I am well. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
Excited to have a juicy conversation today.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Before we get started, I always love people to introduce themselves and let us know how you're leveraging your experiences, your gifts, your talents to be able to transform lives.
Ooh, that's a good one. So I've been in leadership for decades, but I've been a coach now for 23 years. And I started out my career working for a company that went public called Getty Images, and I was in charge of their sales and service group. So I was part of that executive team, and decided that every day I would come to work and say, okay, I have an opportunity to make a difference in 80 people's lives or not. And that was like my main focus. And I started to realize that what I really wanted to do was to help coach and mentor and support other people in growing, and that I would rather do that on the outside. So I started my business 23 years ago and coaching leaders. And then I transitioned about 8 years ago to actually coaching other coaches that do that work. So I get to be a mentor to them and a coach to them and really see my ripple effect widen. Because instead of working with, 20 people at a time, I'm working with, you know, 12 to 15 people at a time that are working with 20 people at a time and really having this effect in organizations. So it's really fulfilling to see that ripple take off, and also to be able to be a mom to my 6.5-year-old and be able to coach my clients while I have my UGG slippers on and enjoy my life a whole lot more.
It's interesting that you've given your background with this plethora of experiences, but then you continue to talk about your responsibility as a mom. And there's somebody that's going to be listening to this podcast that is building a thriving career, but is still either a mom or a dad or has other personal hats that they have to wear. And in my opinion, it's not truly taught in an effective way on how to juggle and balance these many hats that we wear. Yes, we have books like Atomic Habits, by James Clear, and Essentialism by Greg McCowan, and The One Thing, but it's easier said than done in practice. So could
Mm-hmm.
you talk to us a little bit about how you balance, how you create systems of support for yourself so that you can still show up as this present mom, as well as this present professional, as well as still taking time for Tara at the end of the day?
Yeah, and I have to say, I wore it like a badge that I came back from my 4-month maternity leave to a full practice. And I look back on that now and I was think, what was I trying to prove?
Mm, exactly.
um, I work about half as much as I did then and still make about the same amount of money. And I think part of that is learning what to let go of and what to move into.
Mm,
And, there's all this misperception, which I bought into. Like, I can do it all. I can be super mom. I can do this and do that. And at the end of the day, it was actually quite stressful to try to balance it all. And I realized that I really had to prioritize and decide, okay, what is most important to me? How can I shift my business and my model to make sure that I am having the effect I want in the world and being able to show up fully for my son and
Mm,
not be wasted at the end of the day and impatient and all the things that happen when you're this full up. So I really changed my model. And I think a lot of people actually work with me because they see that, oh wow, you have 12 clients and
yeah.
you're making good money and you're having a nice balanced life. I'm in the garden every day. I live in California, so it makes it easy. But I'm in the garden every day with my son after school and really enjoying my life. And I think that takes a lot of discernment and also the ability to say no
Mm,
to things that are, I always say that Jim Collins said, good is the enemy of great.
yes.
And I think that we are really good in our Western society at settling and accepting. And I need to do this. I need to do this versus what do I really want and
Mm,
how. And I believe the more discerning we are, the better our lives will be.
I
So,
agree. What is it, and I could take this so many different ways in regards to what did it take for you to really gain this level of discernment. But I'm interested in this system that you've created. I'm sure there's been in your journey doubt that has creeped in, self-limiting beliefs that have creeped in, fear that has crept in as well. In this season that you're in right now in your life, what doubt do you have, whether it's personally or professionally, that you see is serving more as a distraction rather as something that is driving your destiny forward?
mm. Yeah, I think there's a fear, there's this interesting juxtaposition between mastery. I've been talking about this a lot lately. When we have mastery, there's a lot of ease.
Mm.
And I'm the type of person that too much ease is too much ease. Like, I need challenge, I need novelty, I need excitement, and I can't, even if my clients are super happy, I can't coast for long.
Mm.
But there, at the same time, there's this like, well, why do I want to let go of something that's working so well for everybody else to step into
Yes.
some other things? So, as you know, Kyle, I'm stepping into becoming more of a speaker
Mhm.
and focusing my energy on becoming a keynote speaker in this next year. And that's hard because there's a lot to step into there. And I
Mhm.
know that I need to let go of certain things in order to create the space to do that well. So it's really hard, I think, for everybody to let go of something that's working, that's lucrative,
Mm.
especially in the way that our society deems success, and to, you know, jump towards that trapeze swing that we don't
Of
see yet.
course.
We know it's there, but there's that big leap. And it takes a lot of courage. And I think at the end of the day, what's really necessary is clarity about why this is so important. Because
Mhm.
that's what I anchor myself to and have to re-anchor myself to, because it is a big fear for me to be stepping out in this way. So I have to meditate on it. I have to remind myself all the time why this is so important.
Mhm.
And what's interesting is when you get really clear, the answers become clear, right? It's easy. I had a beautiful prospect this week, and I was just like, you know what, this isn't a fit. And there's a way that we can convince people to be our client. Oh, it would be really nice to have that money. And I'm just there's far more ease in saying no to things that aren't great and aren't that really resonant thing anymore.
I love that perspective, saying no to things that aren't great. I think so often we settle for good enough, and we settle often for good enough because we don't think we deserve great.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt in your accomplishments and in the things that you've been able to do in your professional career that you didn't deserve the success or the revenue
Mm.
or the visibility that came with all of the hard work that you knew that you were putting in?
It's such a great question. It's interesting because we all have our different inner saboteurs.
Mm.
And I am a manifester. So when I'm clear, success actually comes really easy to me. And it's I don't even know why, other than clarity. So for me, stepping into like I don't have fear of success. I know so many people do, and I know that might not be relatable to a lot of people in the audience. Now I have a lot of other fears: fear of being seen, fear of losing my privacy, fear of being judged, all sorts of things about putting myself out into this speaker role. Success is not one of them. But I also realize that I see that in my clients all the time, that holds them back. Like, we tend to hold on to things that make us feel secure. And, I think it would be easy to hold on to the coaching practice that I have in the way that I have it because it's lucrative. On the outside, that looks like success, right? And versus following my own definition of success. And that takes courage to leap out into something different. And I know if I commit to it that I'll be successful. I don't have that fear, at least 95% of the time. But I have a lot of other fears that hold me back. How will this affect my family? How will this affect my marriage if I'm traveling more? So I do have those fears that come in. And I have to remind myself, I have to sit in the stillness, which I've been doing a lot lately because these fears have been coming up. And I think they are gifts, to be curious about what's true about them,
Mm.
what's story and what is true, and to really find that kernel of truth and integrate that, and let the rest go. So I hope that, I know that's a little roundabout to your
No, it
question, but
is.
I hope that that gets to the point.
It does. And I think it's important for anybody listening right now. I love how you said to find that kernel of truth um, in all of those different things. And I think so often we're our hardest critics. Um, we often find all of the reasons why something won't work or why we shouldn't do something rather than celebrating why something could work or seeing the gifts that we do have that would make something become successful. I'm
Yeah.
interested in all of your journey. What has been a lesson that you've learned that you recognize transformed your whole perspective in regards to business or coaching in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big piece is letting go of other people's expectations. And Glennon Doyle, who I'm a big fan of, says, not to, I'm paraphrasing, but if you disappoint, don't disappoint yourself, for the sake of others. And I think as a, I think as a people pleaser, where I've gotten tripped up in my life is when I worried about the other person or the organization or the client or my husband more than, and gave that so much weight that I held back my own desire. And that's why it's important for me to really sit with that and return to that all the time, because I do believe that if it doesn't serve me, it doesn't serve. And I say that to my clients all the time who also have this issue. I mean, I think it's very common in our world that we're told to succeed in this organization, you have to do X, Y, and Z. And I can't, have my opinion. I can't assert my boundaries. And I always say, if it doesn't serve, it doesn't serve. Um, it's including if you decide to leave because it's not serving you. At the end of the day, the organization will be better off. In that moment, it might not feel that way,
Exactly.
but I think that's a big one for me.
Tara, that is an interesting perspective. If it doesn't serve, it doesn't serve. And I think that's something that a lot of business coaches, a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and organizations need to understand. And I think that needs to become a skill set that people can
Oh yeah.
continue to embody internally so that they can pour it out in regards to the people that they serve as well. I'm interested in your experience. What are some of the most common mistakes that business coaches, your clients potentially are making when they're trying to build and scale their organizations, and how do you help them avoid these pitfalls?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is, I always say, the only advice you should ever take is not to take advice. And I have a lot of opinions, and I
Mhm.
share them very freely with my clients. I've been doing this a long time. I've seen a lot, so I can share a ton of stuff with them. And then I say, "Okay, what resonates with you?" And I think we are programmed in our society to override our own instincts. And if you look at in business, people who've been wildly successful, particularly innovators and inventors, it's because they've gone against the grain. And oftentimes people said, "You're crazy. You're doing what?" No one's gonna, no one's going to buy that phone every 2 years. That's $1,000. There's a lot of naysayers, and a lot of like stay in line. I think our society has really been built around being cogs in a wheel to some extent. So I think really what trips people up is when smart people give them advice and they think they have to take it because this person's smarter than me, when their gut is telling them, I don't know, and I've seen this. I've seen this before. I've once coached for a very large coaching organization, and I kind of laughed because I mean, not in more of a, not a funny way, but like an interesting way, that people would be spend most of their coaching sessions with me crying because they didn't want to do the thing that this guru coach told them they needed to do. And so I was like, well, obviously this is not working for you. Let's figure out a different way. And it was interesting because my clients had a lot more success than the other coaches. And the guru coach was like, "Oh, I really want you to stay on. You're doing so great." And I'm like, "Yeah, but this is this is not really in service to what you're saying because most of the people are doing different things than what you're telling them to do." So it's just like a microcosm of I think when people override themselves to
Mhm.
please others, or they think somebody else is smarter, or I paid this consultant all this money, so I should listen. That's where they end up in a business that might even look like success on the outside, but it doesn't feel successful. They don't love being in it. And what's the point? If you don't love being in it, you're not going to want to go to work every day. You're not going to give your all. You're not going to show up with the best energy. You're not going to be the best leader. So I believe trusting yourself and making sure that you're working with people who ultimately want you to make the best decision for them.
What would you say is the story in your life that would be representative of where you are today? And I guess, what is the story that, or the experience that has shaped you in a way that has given you the perspectives that you have today that you pour into your clients and in your business?
Oh, it's like, how do I say this succinct story? Well, I came from a family where my father was self-made. He beat out 150 kids to get a full scholarship to a prep school, and his college, his master's, his PhD, his MBA were all scholarships.
Wow.
And so I had a certain influence on that. So like I'm one of 5 kids, and there's no mistake that we're all been wildly successful. 3 of us have been VPs of publicly traded companies. There's a lot of success there. And it's interesting because when I left Getty Images, my father was not happy with me. And in fact, he told all of his friends that I was unemployed for the first 2 years that I had my business. And I'm like, I'm actually making pretty decent salary doing this. Um, and it took a lot of courage for me to follow my path because my father continued to you know, share certain things with me along the way. And what's interesting is that a year and a half ago, my father died, and I felt like this again, the stillness like came over me, and I realized that so much of the energy, the push energy, like the going back to work 4 months after my son was born to a full practice, that was such a push. And I realized so in so much of my life, I have pushed
Mm,
to get the success that I've had. And I've also made a lot of pivots, courageous pivots, because I found I wasn't happy. To some extent, I've had this like little low dissatisfaction in my life throughout my life. And I realized it's because I wasn't truly listening to myself,
mm.
and I was listening to other people's guidance. And I find that like now at 53, I'm really remembering who I really am
Wow.
and allowing that part of me to shine again.
I really appreciate you sharing that, Tara. I really do. The level of vulnerability and authenticity, um, because the world needs who you are. And I love how you said remembering who I am, because I think oftentimes we always know. I think, but over time with society and parents and bosses and spouses, those all of that noise continues to creep into our minds and it silences the inner voice that has been
Yeah.
guiding us the whole time. So it's
Yeah.
about just getting back to listening to the voice that's already guiding you, that you know who you are, you know your power, you know your worth, you know your value, and just continuing to trust in yourself, stay in your lane, and run your own race at your own pace. When
Mhm.
you when you
Love that.
when you think of that woman that stepped out of Getty Images, that took courage and that was a risk. But there's so many people right now that aren't willing to take that risk. What would be your advice? What would be a piece of encouragement that you would give to that young
Mm.
woman that was in this same exact place as you? That woman that had pressure to be this corporate success, that woman that, their parents paved the way for them, that woman that wanted the world, but she wanted to write her own story and not the story that was written for her. What would be your encouragement or words for her?
Hmm. Well, one thing is that our fears are just, it's like they're almost not real, right? They're that we make up a lot of a lot of things. We make up that, leaving an executive role and all that money, dot, dot, dot. Like there's a lot of things that we make up about the choices we really want to make. And part of that is to remember that those parts of us just want to keep us safe. So they are well meaning and they are not the truth with a capital T. And I think part of it is to understand that, you know, as capable human beings in this world that we are in today, you can always make a different choice. So if you take the courage to leave and it doesn't work out, you can always get another job or you can always make another turn. Um, and, they say when people are on their deathbeds that they don't, the number one thing they say is, I wish I didn't work so hard. It's like we spent a whole life so that, if I do this, then I can have this and then I'll be happy. We don't actually focus on being happy in the moment. And a lot of us put off our experience today for some future or for the future of our children. And the reality is, looking at my family as an example, and two parents in an unhappy marriage who stayed together for the kids as an example. I can absolutely tell you as an adult who didn't get married till she was 42 and had to do a lot of work around relationships because I didn't want to get married if it was going to look like that, right? It's like we think we're doing the best things for our children, but are we, right? It's like to remember that what we think is not necessarily what is. Our brains can get in the way. So to listen to the heart, listen to the gut, and use the brain too. We're all connected. Um, and if you are conflicted, that is a place to get curious
Tara,
because
sorry for cutting you off, Tara, but
no, no,
that
no, that's fine.
that spoke to me so much. Because I know we talked about this at HPS about a month or two ago. We share so many of the same experiences. And it's interesting because obviously we're in two different brackets. So, the things that you've experienced, I can learn now so that we don't, continue to repeat those cycles. It's an African proverb that says it's a fool that learns from his own mistakes, but it's a wise man that learns from the mistakes of others. So
Mm,
when you speak in that way, and I've witnessed parents that weren't in the happiest of relationships, but a part of that culture and that time frame, they just stay for the children, and they just continue to stay, and it's created a sense in my mind that, well, if I'm gonna do it, I want to do it on my terms, and I don't want it to look like that. And I
yeah,
think anybody listening, don't let what it looked like create fear that doesn't give you the courage to still jump.
yeah.
Just because you didn't experience love visually doesn't mean you don't deserve it. Just
Hmm.
because you didn't experience success financially doesn't mean that you're not worthy of it. You still, just like Tara has said, you have to trust yourself. You have to listen to that gut, that heart, and still follow your mind, because that inner voice is leading you towards where you're supposed to be despite your circumstance.
Love
Tara,
that.
where would you be if it wasn't for your last mistake?
Hmm. Gosh, I make mistakes every day. I, where would I be if it weren't for my last mistake? That's a good question. I'm searching for a mistake worthy of sharing, not because I'm not afraid to be vulnerable, but want it to be juicy. Well, and I think what I would say along these lines, um, like as an example, this wasn't my last mistake, but it's one that comes to mind because, as you know, Kyle, I'm on the path to become a keynote speaker, and I hired a coach who was a famous uh, keynote speaker and author in 2009 to help me with this, and I chickened out. Um, well, I think that's strong to say. I chose not to. I chose staying in my comfort zone. I mean, and one of the things that was really funny about coaching with this guy is that one of the things that I was wrestling with was this fear of losing my privacy. And he kind of laughed and he said, I think it's so funny that you don't assume that you're going to fail. You assume you're going to be so successful that you're going to become famous. And then you can't walk down the street without makeup on. So I have interesting saboteurs that are maybe not that common. Um, and, you know, I invested a lot of time and energy. I got a lot of things out of it. And I I didn't step I didn't step out. Um, and I don't believe in, I believe everything is perfect in its imperfect way, and we will continue to get the lessons until we learn it. And I agree. I wish I didn't have to learn those lessons myself and could uh, get it from the world around me. But I realize now that all roads have led to Rome, and it is time, and I am not going to let go of it anymore. And there are a lot of fears that are coming up for me, but I also have support around me. My friend Allison, who's my best friend, is going through this journey with me. You are um, your beautiful fiance. So, I'm surrounding myself with people that won't let me, who will remind me who I am when I forget.
Tara, I appreciate that perspective so much, because there's so many people that had a goal, had a dream in 2009 and 2010 and 2008 that they maybe even tried to do, and because it didn't work out, or because they maybe weren't ready in that season, it's now 2023 and they don't believe in it anymore. and they stopped imagining, they stopped dreaming, they stopped
Yeah.
believing. And now they're in a place that may seem successful on a resume, but they know deep down they're still yearning for more.
Mhm.
If you could speak to that person for 60 seconds, every person right now that lost their imagination, that lost that hope, that lost that belief that used to make them so happy inside when they would share it with someone else, what would you say to that person, and how would you help them get a spark back to try again?
Mm. I believe that when we come into this world, we are clear, and we are divine. And then little by little, the layers appear. And I think the most important thing for each of us to remember is that at the heart of those layers is this beautiful, vibrating, electric soul that is ready. If they can just get out of the layers, right? And just for all of us to know that unpeeling is why we're here, right? Like we came here, this is a spiritual sense, but I believe that we came here for the human experience because it's really interesting. And boy, is it, right?
It
And
is.
that most of us spend a lifetime, we spend the first part of our life getting the layers, and then we spend a lifetime taking them off.
Mm.
Um, and, you know, those layers can be peeled off. It doesn't have to be painful. It can be liberating. And the world is wanting you in that authentic, beautiful way. They're not wanting the layered version of you. So anything you make up about, I've got to be this way or else isn't true, So, um, and I think to know that the layers, I think people believe to some extent that they're kind of baked, they can't change things. And having worked with hundreds, actually thousands really, of people, I have seen it over and over that those layers can come off, and you just need to get the right support if you can't do it on your own.
Get the right support, unveil the layers, unpack before you can impact, and trust yourself on this journey. Believe in something, even if it's challenging, and overcoming all of the obstacles that are thrown in front of you, because your life matters and you're worthy of the very success that you desire. Tara, this has been phenomenal. This has been so phenomenal. Where can we find you online? How can we support you as well?
Well, my business is called Broadview Coaching, so broadviewcoaching.com. And I have a lot of tools there. I work with professional coaches, but I also create a lot of tools that my clients use with their clients. So, anybody who's looking to sort of dig in a little bit, I have some tools on my website that might be helpful. And I have a blog with hundreds of articles for entrepreneurs and professional coaches. So, check me out there.
Tara, thank you so, so much. Thank you so much for your time. And
Thank
I'm
you.
definitely excited for you to take the stage and start to share those privacy moments and just transform so many people, because in the conversations that we had at HBS, in this conversation, I definitely believe that you are meant to transform millions of people. And
Mm,
your story matters. You are so worthy, you're valuable, and I see you in all of the
thank
different
you.
things that you've experienced, good and bad, through your journey, brought you to this moment. And it was this pruning process for you to walk other people in the direction towards their purpose. So I thank you for that, and I want to honor you in that way. Um,
Thank
Anybody
you.
listening, this is the Writers Game podcast, where we help you magnify your voice and monetize your message. And we will see you all next episode.